Good evening and welcome. You're watching Tidal Flooding Talk. We are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition and Tri-X 57. I'm here tonight with my co-hosts Dan Skeldon and Joe Martucci, and we have a very special guest tonight, Bruckner Chase. He is an ocean advocate and safety expert. Good evening, Bruckner. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your mission?
Sure, absolutely. As we were discussing earlier, I am a transplant from many places, but more recently from Northern California. My wife is from South Jersey, and I met her surfing in Monterey Bay. So that brought me to this colder side of the ocean coast. What I thought was white sand was actually snow. I learned that after I moved here the first winter. So um, it's been an amazing now almost 20 years now in New Jersey. The main work that I do, we have a foundation called Ocean Positive, whose mission statement is to positively impact how we all feel, think, and act towards our oceans and our communities. And I've been really lucky since we started that foundation initially at a request from the government of American Samoa to help address coastal issues for the remote villages in that South Pacific island. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to work with various divisions of NOAA, and more recently working closely with National Ocean Service and National Weather Service to better communicate coastal science and safety to people from throughout the U.S. So that those tourists and visitors that we host every summer, trying to get them more informed so that they can stay safer and more aware on our beaches. So one of the goals is let's keep our lifeguards dry because everyone knows what they're getting into when they step foot on the sand.
And we should say too, you're here in Summers Point, like you said, at the Jersey Shore. But your work is truly national and maybe even international if you count American Samoa as international. Not really sure on that one, but when you talk about, I think what we're all connected with is that we want to stay safe from the water, right? I mean that's part of what you're doing. So tell us a little bit more about your work with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. What you're doing there to keep people safe from the water. And then just as a follow-up here, how much relationship do you have with specifically coastal or tidal flooding as well?
Well, I mean, with a lot of what we do, we talk about staying safe, with ocean waters, but, really storms, hurricanes, flooding, all of that that changes what was already a dynamic environment in that near shore environment. You add in, storms and hurricanes and wind changes and stuff. We're talking now in this new series that we're working on called Blue IQ that people are used to walking out their front door and checking the weather. They want to know, is it going to rain? And, how hot or cold is it going to be? But the weather that we need people to be aware of at the shore and then coastal forecasts as well. How our distant storms may be going to impact flooding on the islands or in low-lying areas. And then how do you stay safe? How do you read the water or know what to expect and how it might impact you? And so our work with NOAA, especially in American Samoa, where those villages that are highly susceptible to sea level rises or tsunamis or extreme storms really impacting, infrastructure that may take a long time to rebuild. How do we not only help people understand what those forecasts and what those conditions might mean for their life in the villages, say in American Samoa, and then if they are in the middle of a dangerous situation, how do they understand what's going on and how do they protect themselves and others? And I think that NOAA and so many different branches of NOAA, the National Ocean Service, National Marine Sanctuaries, it protects our marine protected areas. There's so much incredible science coming out of NOAA that helps inform those that are visiting our shores and those that live here, to help us appreciate and understand what's going on and then stay safe around it. And I think that I've been able to link in friends from Australia to what we do here, as well as Canada, as well as over in Europe. So I think that really having a global understanding of how these oceans that we share may impact our local communities.
Well, Bruckner, I think it's kind of cool. You've had the unique experience of living on the Pacific and living on the Atlantic, and I think anyone who
Mm-hmm.
lives on any ocean, is connected in many similar ways.
Right.
Now, can you talk a little bit about the similarities and perhaps the differences that exist?
Yeah.
Are there different concerns on the Pacific or in American Samoa or on the coast of California than there are, say, on the East Coast of New Jersey?
It absolutely is. And one of the things that helped really kind of inform some of those differences, when we were working on the Wave Safe series with NOAA that came out a few years ago, we took a geographic specific look at coastal hazards and dangers, talking to the various National Weather Service weather forecasting offices in the Pacific Northwest, in Southern California, in Hawaii, in Mount Holly, and going, hey, what do you think your community really needs to know and may not know about these ocean conditions and these shorelines, be it visitors or locals? And I think, I tell people one of the biggest things that I noticed as a surf life saving athlete is I was in Northern California, in Monterey Bay. I was in the water training year round. A cold day in winter in San Francisco Bay, the water temperature might be, 49 or 50 degrees. A warm day in summer in San Francisco, that water temperature might be 58 or 59, like an 8-degree change. Here, on the other hand, a cold day in January, that water might be 30 or 31 with ice in the waves, and then a warm day in summer might be 82. And I think the most noticeable change for me was from an 8-degree swing in water temperatures to like a 50-degree swing. And that was really significant. And also with nor'easters that are coming up in January and February, these intense winds, cold temperatures, and what that did to really tear up the beaches and tear up the ocean environment. Obviously hurricanes here, but we have storms that hit recently in San Diego, large waves, tsunami issues in the West Coast, and different beach contours as well, from cliffs and remote beaches to mostly sand beaches, at least in the Mid-Atlantic region. And then, as you guys know, tides are different in different places. You have diurnal tides in the Gulf of Mexico, where you have one high and one low each day. You have semi-diurnal tides here, where we have two highs and two lows. And then in California, it's mixed. So you have a higher high and a lower high and a lower low and a higher low. So tides are a big change, temperatures are a big change, and then wave periods, wave dynamics is also, I found, very different, from surfing in Northern California to the beach breaks and stuff we have here. A lot of that is bathymetry and just the contours of the shore too.
And also all the people that are out surfing in California, I feel like there's a lot more people in the water
Yeah, it's
compared
it's
to here.
interesting. I was just recently out in San Diego, and one of the jokes, or and obviously I'm stereotyping a little bit, but a lot of the locals joke that, yeah, we don't go in the water, we go to the beach because the water's 56 degrees. Whereas here, as someone who's also an ocean lifeguard out here, we have a lot of people that go in the water. So when the water's 75, 80 degrees, we've got huge numbers on the beaches, but then a lot of people are in the water as well. In California, you'll have packed beaches, but probably fewer people in the water because of the conditions and the temperatures and stuff. But yeah, I tell people, like, the number of lifeguards, the number of people on the beaches in this region is staggering. And I've had people from California come out here to visit that, we've been showing around, and they're like, I had no idea that it was this dense as far as beach visitors and coastal visitors.
Now, what are some small changes that someone could make or even visitors can make to stay more ocean safe and ocean minded, really, when visiting here at the Jersey coast?
Well, one thing, and I think, Dan and Joe, the meteorologist, are going to back me up on this. What I mentioned earlier, whereas a lot of people are used to checking, the temperature and is it going to rain or not, and really going to the beach, especially on a barrier island, because water. And we've got stuff happening in the bay, stuff happening in the ocean, and knowing coastal forecasts that many of the weather forecasting offices that serve shore communities will put out coastal forecasts. Pay attention to small craft advisories. Yeah, you may not be going out on a boat, but the conditions that are making it hazardous for a boater near shore is going to really impact the experience you're going to have. Say, if you've got 4 and 5-year-old kids that want to play at the beach, and understanding the impact of wind direction and wind strength on that near shore environment, and looking at coastal conditions, because on the beach here, and I'm pointing that way because Ocean City is just on the other side of the bay here. If you pull a weather forecast for Atlantic City Airport, that might be very, very different than what you're going to experience on the beach in Strathmere or Ocean City. Would that be about right, Dan and Joe?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember just 3 years ago, there was we had a blizzard. We had a blizzard during the month of January 2022, when we're talking about, on national television, what Atlantic City was doing. It was really the airport. Atlantic City didn't have as much snow, as what was going on at the airport. So yeah, totally. And keep going.
Yeah, and think about it. We have a lot of visitors in South Jersey. They're coming down from Philadelphia. You go further central Jersey, maybe it's more people from New York or so. So people will pull up the weather forecast. They flip on the Weather Channel and they've got it set for Philadelphia, and they go, oh, it's going to be 85 degrees and sunny, and they head down to the shore, and we may have fog until 2 o'clock in the afternoon that hasn't burned off yet, and maybe we have winds making that near shore environment really dangerous, or we have pop-up storms and lightning that might make a beach visit really dangerous on that day. And I think one of the best things I think we can do is really, communicate to people that are heading to the beach going, hey, look, find the forecast as close as possible to the beach and the location that you're visiting. That's really going to help you. And then we also tell people that we can kind of, and we worked on this with NOAA, we kind of broke up that beach environment to kind of 3 zones. The safe zone, kind of up in the dunes where you're away from the water, you're kind of out of harm's way. Then the awareness zone, kind of where the lifeguards are, that closer to the ocean, but not in the water yet. That's where you're going to look for, where are the lifeguards? How do I get off the beach? Are there signs? Are there warning signs telling me what's going on? Are there red flags or yellow flags or signs in the sand? And then the impact zone, where you're actually in the swash zone, where the waves are breaking, coming up and going away. So you may arrive with the knowledge of the forecast and this is what's coming, but then take a pause, take a few minutes in that safe zone where you can kind of survey where you're about to head down to the water. And what do you see? What's going on there? Marrying what you learned before you headed down there to what's going on right in front of you. Because I'm in Summers Point. I'm literally 2 miles as the crow flies from the beach. But there are times where it's been sunny in my backyard. I drive over to the beach and the fog is so thick on that beach, visibility is less than 100 meters. Like, it is staggering. And if you're going out into the water or a surfer, I mean, that can be dangerous when you decrease visibility. If there's a boat going by or a jet ski going by, or you're swimming or paddling and you don't see jetties that you now end up on top of, that type of checking with what you found out and then what you see in front of you. And we talk about one of the most valuable tools that you can bring to any beach environment is situational awareness. And I think a lot of us, you drove to the beach, and when you drove, you were looking for people crossing the street, lights changing, people turning in front of you, brake lights, cars. You're aware because you want to get to the beach safely. But then often people get to the beach and they go, well, there's lifeguards, we're here on vacation, let's just turn our brains off and just enjoy it and relax. And really, you need to maintain that situational awareness. It's a dynamic environment. Things are changing. The people around you are doing different things. The environment is changing, both the ocean and the community around you. And maintaining that level of awareness, especially if you're coming down with friends or family or young children, what's going on, so that you can ideally help prevent dangerous situations from happening. And really prevention is kind of what, lifeguards are focused on. And often, sometimes, if it gets to the point where it's a rescue, it's a failure of some of that prevention. Like, we want to prevent stuff. I think that visitors to the beach can take a really important role in that, in stopping in that safe zone, staying situationally aware. What do you see in front of you? And then you move into that awareness zone. Now you're at the beach, the lifeguards are there, and staying aware there. Do you hear whistles signaling you to do something, to move, to clear the beach? Had the flags changed? As you guys know, you may go to the beach at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. The winds are 2 to 3 miles an hour. They're blowing offshore. It's a perfect day. It's beautiful. It's calm. You go away to lunch, you come back, and now it's 20 miles an hour out of the southeast. The ocean conditions are really tough, really challenging. The tides change, and now there's a red flag up. Those things can change, from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning. It happens that fast. And as you get closer into now the impact zone in the water, that's where you really need to pay attention. And one of the things that's really important is a lot of people head to the ocean and the beach, and they don't recognize that they may be experienced as swimmers, or they may be, great on land. They're athletes, they're runners, they're a basketball player, football player, and they think, I got this. I totally understand this. And I have seen the ocean environment completely undermine that person's perception of how strong or confident they are with the first wave. And I think that really trying to help people understand their level of water confidence, of what they think they can do, and what the ocean conditions may demand that they know or be able to do.
Now, do you think that there is something? Sorry, Joe.
No, good, Paul.
Do you think that there are ways that maybe communities or groups like the coalition could help this mission of making people more aware of this when they are visiting the beach? Because I know a lot of people, we pass a million signs going onto the beach. Is everyone going to stop and read those signs? Probably not.
No, and I think that as we looked at, so one of my main bodies of work with NOAA is how do we better communicate coastal conditions, coastal science, and put it in terms that people can understand. And often, one of the things that I am really prone to, or primed to listen to, is the myth of common sense. Too often we go, well, people just know that it's common sense. Common sense is predicated on shared experiences and understanding of those experiences. So while it might be common sense for me to check something before I go into the water, if this is a once in a lifetime trip to the beach or a once a year trip to the beach, it's not necessarily common sense. And you asked, how do we communicate to those people? And I think that, as you said, we've got all these signs. And as I told you earlier, I used to work in retail development, and you look at end caps and signs in retail stores because you're selling something. You want people to be engaged and understand. And here we're selling them on a positive experience on the shores that we love. How do we encourage them to buy into, we want you to have a great experience, we want you to keep it safe, and want you to come back again? And I think that what we want to do, and what we're working with the weather forecasting offices and other NOAA partners, is how do we get to people and educate them before their feet are in the sand? Because once you've gotten your donuts at the local place on the boardwalk, and you've got two kids, one in strollers, and you're holding all this stuff and carrying it, and you're starting to walk onto the beach, you're not going to quick and pull out your phone and scan that QR code or read that sign. We want you, before you put your feet in the sand, to kind of know a little bit more. So kind of moving that education and awareness education upstream. And I think really, finding our partners, like we've been talking a lot to the weather forecasting office in Memphis, Tennessee, because we know a lot of Memphians head down to the Florida Panhandle. And anyone who's followed national drowning trends, there's some places on the Florida Gulf Coast where there have been a lot of drownings recently. And it's people that arrive really not aware of what to look for and what the conditions might do that become dangerous. And I think moving it upstream, and signage is not 100% effective. Not everyone reads it. And I think one thing that I pulled from my retail experience is Rarely will you go into the grocery store from one week to the next, and the stuff on that end cap that you walk right past is always changing. It's not always the same. So if a city or an agency puts up a warning sign and that sign has not changed in 10 years, guess what? People are going to stop looking at it. And I think changing that up, so we're reinforcing the learning process and reinforcing and encouraging the behavior change that is going to help people protect themselves, protect their family, and protect their friends.
Bruckner, so with the water, right? And I just want to shift us a little bit more towards the moving water. Like, how much moving water
Yeah.
does it take to move a person or a car or a truck? What have you seen? And is there a difference between stronger swimmers and not as strong swimmers in terms of how much water it takes to knock someone over or move them down?
I love that question. And it's one that we are addressing now because how do we translate the weight of a wave or the power of a current to something someone's going to understand if they're from Missouri or Indiana or Kentucky? I'm from states like that. I'm from Tennessee. But how do we translate it to someone who's not as familiar with these conditions? I was working with one of the researchers on rip currents with National Ocean Service, Greg Dusick, and we were talking about this, and he goes, "Look, he sent me some guides on how to calculate the weight of water and the weight of a wave, and one of the things we looked at is like a 2 foot wave, just a 2 foot wave. If you look at the amount or the surface area that's going to hit you, it's going to hit you with about 500 pounds of water. Now, that's not taking into forces, that mass, and the acceleration. So now you got a moving wave. But just imagine 500 pounds of water coming at you and hitting you in the chest. We're comparing that. So imagine being hit by two linebackers on an offensive line or on a defensive line. That's what just a 2 foot wave can do to you or feel like if you're not prepared for it. And I think that, we talk a lot about currents in the ocean. And while rip currents are something that we need to be aware of, cross beach currents and tidal currents near inlets that can actually move even faster and even further. Often we talk about the speed of a current, and most currents may not be that fast. You hear a lot people go, well, they're faster than an Olympic swimmer, which in rare occasions they may be. But what is really important is sometimes the currents can be very subtle, that they are starting to move someone who's not staying as aware, and all of a sudden they're further offshore or they're further down the beach, closer to dangerous conditions than they realize. So it's not necessarily that they're really fast all the time or really strong all the time, but they can be relentless. And if you're not aware that you're being moved, you can get into danger and not have the strength to get back. And I think that we talk about, you asked about swimming, and one of the things that we've really driven home talking to, broadcast meteorologists working with the American Meteorological Society is, how do you define what swimming is? So I was a college swimmer. If I'm going to the beach to swim, if I tell you I'm going to the beach to swim, that means I'm getting in the water, I'm putting on a cap and goggles, and I'm going to go down the beach and back. Like I'm going to swim a significant different distance down and back. Whereas some people may say, oh, I'm going to go swim, but they're just going to go play in the waves. Or they may go, look, I'm not swimming, or I am. So it's really important, and we really kind of clarify what we mean by that. And so if we're telling people, just if you get pulled out in a current, just swim along the beach and then swim back in. Well, according to the American Red Cross, almost 52% of the American population will state that they cannot pass a basic swimming test, which is in a pool, swimming 25 yards, floating for a minute, turning around and getting back to the wall. So for many people, if you are in a rip current or you're pulling out, swimming 200 meters when you don't know when the wall's going to be there or you don't know how deep it is, and you've got chop and waves, it's going to be beyond most people's ability. And one of the things that we're really focusing on is you don't know your swimming ability and how it compares to the ocean conditions, or you don't know how to read that and how it might impact you. The fallback is, if you don't know, don't go.
I like that. If you don't know, don't go.
Don't know, don't go. That's kind of the key message with the new Blue IQ series. Like, it's a complex environment. I mean, you guys, you're broadcast meteorologist, Palma. You have been working in flood mitigation and safety mitigation and stuff. Very complex topics and complex things to protect people in our communities. And we cannot expect someone who comes down here for 5 days to learn as much as we know from living here. And I think that, we try to explain it. Our lifeguards try to explain it. We try to give people relevant and critical information. But at the end of the day, if you don't know, don't go. There's a lot of great, fun things to do on our beaches, on our boardwalks, and not necessarily getting in the water on a certain day isn't going to be the end of the vacation. And in fact, it might be the best way to spend that vacation day to make sure that you've got another one after that.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, no, I just think, rip currents are beginning more and more, airtime, and people have been knowledgeable about it. But I think what you said about the inlets, the Jersey Shore, so many, the mouths of back bays and inlets, and I've seen boaters get in trouble there because of the currents, let alone a swimmer. So I think that's great advice. And I do like the Weather Service has the turnaround, don't drown. Don't know, don't go. I think the rhyming helps. It's a catchy little jingle, and it's something people remember. And I think it's very valuable 4 words.
Yeah, we want to keep it simple. It's good to have those sound bites and stuff. And I think that there was a traumatic rescue in South Florida off of Tampa Bay, and I was on the Weather Channel discussing this, and I did some research on where they went into the water, and it was at the inlet to Tampa Bay. It was at an outgoing tide, and that swept this man and his son almost a half mile offshore. And it was really important that, learning from that experience, that now you'll see as the Weather Channel, as we talk about certain things, we're identifying these inlets as dangerous places along the Florida Gulf Coast. Our Jersey Shore, we're almost nothing but barrier islands. And one of the most harrowing rescues I've ever been on, I was out training in the water after hours. A fisherman fell off the jetty in Ocean City, outgoing tide, and he was going out to sea. And there was nothing that he could do. There was no one around. So I ended up getting out to him and having to swim almost 300 meters along the beach with him. I was able to get him onto a board 300 meters down the beach to get out of that outgoing tide, far stronger than any rip current. And I think that we have regretfully over talked about rip currents. They are an issue in the ocean, but I think it's also really important to recognize and message about what a certain danger is. So talking about those tidal currents at inlets. In the Pacific Northwest, sneaker waves are a big thing, where waves that travel much further up a beach and then pull someone out into the water. Yes, it's a wave pulling them out, but if we tell people a rip current survival guide when it's a sneaker wave, we're not preventing that same accident from happening again, because it was a different mechanism that got him into trouble. And I think that, many people go into that swash zone, that turbulent area where the waves are breaking, coming up and pulling back out again. And people could get knocked off of their feet and pulled into deeper water by receding waves and get into trouble long before they may end up in a rip current. And I think it's really important that not everything is a rip current, and we really talk about hazards that you might find at the beach and let people prepare for that, so that they don't have to worry about swimming 300 meters to get out of a rip current.
Good stuff, Bruckner. We really appreciate it. We're running up on time here. We have a hard out at 7:30. But if you want to talk for 15 seconds where they can follow you for more, sir, we'd love to pass that information along.
Well, you can find us at bcoceanpositive.org and look for and search for NOAA, NOAA Wave Safe, which has beach specific information for the Pacific Northwest, California, East Coast, Hawaii, and American Samoa. And coming in about 2 months, you can search for NOAA Blue IQ and find more specific information that might translate those beach conditions into something familiar to your world.